Hi, we've got an unusual treat tonight. Tonight, Shabbat coincides with the Jewish festival of Tu B'Shvat, the 15th of the month of Shvat, which is popularly known as the birthday of the trees. And so I'd like to share with you a few thoughts about my visual interpretation of Lekha Dodi. Why, you might ask? Well, of all Shabbatot this year, this is a great time to share them with you because they actually tie directly into Tu B'Shvat. Here you see my introductory paintings for this lovely and much beloved song. The introduction is actually the one on the right. So, Lekha Dodi, by Rabbi Isaac Luria's older colleague, Shlomo Halevi Alkabetz, is a wild puzzle of a poem of ideas about how the Shekhinah pours divine wisdom into our material world as Shabbat arrives. And my paintings involve a fusion of mysticism, science, and mystical ideas about the feminine, and their creative force in our beautiful land. In the Illuminations, we watch as though we are wedding guests, as the Shekhinah, again, the most accessible emanation of God, the funnel of all divine wisdom into the world, as the Shekhinah floats toward her wedding canopy, the chuppah, and enriches the human world with divine wisdom. Now, this painting is a complicated puzzle all by itself, so in the interest of time, I'm only talking about a very little bit of its symbolism. You'll find it all explained in my book, Kabbalat Shabbat, the Grand Unification. The border text here is the famous passage from Proverbs 8, in which wisdom describes herself as God's earliest and feminine companion, the bridge between heaven and earth. And on Shabbat, Lady Wisdom enters the human realm as the Shekhinah, the divine bride. So here you can see, we see a bride, but where's the groom? Shekhinah's groom, the divine emanation called Tiferet or beauty, has not yet, so far as we can see, appeared. But in fact, he surrounds her, evident in the intense greens, his own color, the greens of the fertile fields through which she approaches her marriage canopy. And this is where we see hints of the rebirth of life that we celebrate on Tu B'Shvat. Now, Tu B'Shvat, we know, is our birthday of the trees, the festival marking the midpoint of the winter rainy season when the sap will begin to rise again, creating new life in the natural world. The festival began as a way of marking the time until certain agricultural produce was ready for tithing, and now is the Jewish calendar's special moment for rejoicing in the life-giving gifts and beauty of trees, of the bounty of the natural world. So, rising sap needs water. And so in front of the chuppah, we have a fountain, a symbol of Torah throughout Jewish lore. Its tiles take the form of the atomic spectral lines of carbon. You can see the little lines in it, the element common to all forms of life on Earth. The four streams of water coming from the fountain allude to a Kabbalistic idea about how the Garden of Eden, in the words of one medieval Kabbalist, constitutes the beginning of the differentiated universe. And we have myrtle and myrrh shrubs growing at the base of each of the poles supporting the chuppah. Myrtle branches, with their fresh scent, we see them better in the border of the painting, represent the Shekhinah throughout Kabbalah. And in fact, Yitzchak Luria's own community decorated their Sabbath tables with these fragrant branches. The second pair of paintings, presenting the latter verses of Lekha Dodi, has miniature images relating to the national rebirth and redemption that the poem describes at its literal level. Here you see the miniature paintings a bit more closely. So the poet Alkabetz, whose Sephardic family, within a generation or two, had escaped the murderous Spanish Inquisition and expulsion, is fascinated with the power of the Shekhinah to bring about national rebirth. To the mystical community, the earthly rebirth of Israel, the Messiah, would not simply be reestablishing Jewish rule in Israel, but it would be a reflection of the heavenly reunification of all the emanations or sefirot of God that exploded apart at the beginning of the universe, at the beginning of time. As my collaborator in this book, Raymond Shendlin, observes, Alkabetz writes about Israel rising from the dust, being saved with the help of Jesse's son, King David, God rejoicing in the Shekhinah as a groom rejoices in his bride. And these are all images about the Sabbath, Shabbat, heralding the national rebirth. So I've painted two visual clues here from Ezekiel and from the Song of Songs. In Ezekiel 37, in the aftermath of the Babylonian destruction, the prophet famously prophesies Israel's rebirth with a vision of a whole valley of dead, dry bones suddenly shivering into life, reattaching and growing again into living people. This actually is one of my favorite images in all the Hebrew Bible. In the painting at right, I have the Shekhinah, the bride herself, raise a man from the ground that's covered in shards of skeletons, referring precisely to Ezekiel's Valley of Dry Bones. Now, look at the miniature on the left, where you see that a tiny gazelle springs away from the viewer toward the hills, suggesting the final verse of the Song of Songs. Flee, my love, and be like a deer or a young gazelle on the mountains of spice. In the Targum, the Aramaic paraphrase of Song of Songs, this verse anticipates the unification of God and Israel at the time of the Messiah. Jumping off of that idea, one mystic suggests that souls will be bound up in the bond of life, and they will be a throne for the Lord. Then the river, which is the life and existence of the world, flowing forth from the Eden of wisdom, will cease its flow. This is the meaning of flee, my beloved, pointing to the rising of the glory, its ascent into the upper light. As friends rise to greet the Sabbath bride, human souls become a throne for the Lord. Shabbat Shalom. Now follow these little videos for further adventures exploring the Jewish spirit through visual midrash. Full discussions of the poetry and paintings above can be found in Kabbalat Shabbat, the Grand Unification, which was published in this past September. I've also published a matching paperback bencher, Kabbalat Shabbat, the Grand Unification, at the Sabbath table, which contains just the illuminations of the songs and prayers chanted before Shabbat and around the dinner table. This way, everyone at the Sabbath table can share the lovely paintings and ideas along with the lucky person holding the hardback book. As you see on the screen, the books can be purchased at your favorite book source or from the link above. And you can find more about my Hebrew illuminated manuscripts and book talks, there's a lively schedule, at my website, www.dbandart.com. Again, Shabbat Shalom, and thanks. Enjoy.